Hello and welcome to the Collusion the Gathering Fantasy Football Podcast. This is week 4. I'm your host, Ben Ashworth, and with me is defending league champion, David Thornton. How you doing, Thornton?
I really appreciate you throwing that in there. I feel like I'm the only one who has really acknowledged that fact as we get into, a month now of competing. But I appreciate you acknowledging where things currently stand. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, I think we all kind of want to forget the past and reach forward, but, you gotta keep holding up your accomplishments, and maybe the podcast can be a vehicle to exalt the champion a little bit more. I feel like once we get to the last week, people just kind of like, who cares? Because 8 out of 10 people's seasons are basically over at that point.
Understandable, and I admit I have been there before. In fact, I believe the season that you won, you beat me in the final on a year that I auto-drafted and never paid attention to my team the entire season. So
yes,
and I made it to the final. So that just goes to show you right there the talent that really is invested in this game.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, that was a while ago, unfortunately for me. But welcome, guys. Again, this is the fantasy podcast for Collusion the Gathering. Unfortunately, Giesland had some forgetfulness in regards to his computer / sleeping children by his desktop, so he cannot join us this week, but hopefully we'll have him back next week. And again, the invitation is open to anyone who would like to join in on the conversation. We're starting to try to record it each Tuesday night, so just send me a message if you want to join in.
The more the merrier. We are open to all.
That's right.
Everyone who is not James Wagner is welcome to join.
I would actually be interested to hear James's takes.
I'm sure he would have very interesting things to say.
Yes. Although if we got more than 4 people, we might have to get a rotation. But judging as the 0 replies in the emails or comments, I don't really know if people care. But
to be fair, I did listen to the first one, which then made me join in for the next several.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's give the people what they're waiting for. We're going to do our first matchup today, Straight Cash Homies versus the Flaming Nachos. And we have Flaming Nachos winning 119 points to Straight Cash Homies 108. What strikes you about this matchup, Thor?
This was the closest one of the week, which at a 11-point difference is still not incredibly close. So that just shows you the kind of week it was across the board for all of us. But I mean, right out of the gates, you really have feast or famine in this one for Yoshi. Boomer bust. He has Ezekiel Elliott finally coming out and being the player that he was drafted to be. I admit I felt a little guilty. I had talked with Yoshi ahead of time. He was asking for some help about what he should do with a keeper. He'd never played in a keeper league before, and I strongly suggested taking Ezekiel Elliott. And he did, and he'd really been underperforming for the last several weeks, but coming out at a nice even round 30 points in this one. So really getting a quarter of his total right there. Doing it on the ground, doing it in the air, over 200 total yards with that touchdown as well, and helping his actual team, the Cowboys, pull out that victory against Detroit. So really just doing it all for his team this week.
Yep, props to Zeke. I mean, we've had a few first-round running back busts. Le'Veon Bell for Geese is pulled out, and then David Johnson, I'm blinking. Arizona running back.
David Johnson, who is actually starting to turn a corner, I think, feel like a little bit, but that has been a pretty dismal start for some of those real top flight running backs. Even Gurley, who's been solid, has not been over the moon. He's been very good every week, but he's not been like an Alvin Kamara. So even a Saquon Barkley, I think, has outperformed Todd Gurley so far.
Right. He certainly has. But let's see here. We've got a few misses for Dornbush on the bench. Can't really blame him. Andrew Luck lightened it up with 35 points. And
That's true.
Hopkins for Houston wide receiver got 22, but Hopkins had been a bit inconsistent. Two out of the 3 weeks he'd been under 10, so
I need a trade for a receiver from Dornbush. He has Hopkins on the bench and starting Devontae Adams, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Stephon Diggs. That is a overwhelming amount of talent in terms of his receivers.
Yep. It's good. I think a few have been boom or bust, but pretty good. But the Andrew Luck on the bench, 35 points versus Phillip Rivers, who has been generally near the top, but as far as quarterbacks this season in fantasy, he's consistent, but he's consistently near the mid-tier. I'll do another aside on quarterbacks because it's very interesting to me. I did a quick look on the week 4 scores, and there were 8 quarterbacks at 29 points or higher. And so it's interesting since we're a one quarterback league now, it feels like, again, if you're not at 30 points or above, you're kind of missing out. The interesting thing is a lot of the quarterbacks in that top 8, well, now I didn't look at the past weeks, but at least this week, it's not consistent. For example, we had, Mitch Trubisky leading the entire week with 40-some points, and he's not going to be that consistent. And then Marcus Mariota, no one owns, and he was up there. So it's interesting.
True. It's really week to week and matchup to matchup, which now that we are down to a one quarterback league, that's where you can really say there is value sometimes in streaming. I know I waited a long time to take a quarterback just because oftentimes the individual matchup can matter so much more than your top level ones. Even Drew Brees, who's been lights out the first 3 weeks, much less this week. All their touchdowns, I believe, came on the ground, and they really didn't throw nearly as much as they had been.
Yeah, I think that was part of Callie's downfall, which we'll get to that.
Indeed. So just across the board, quarterbacks are going a little crazy, and it can be hard to predict. But you never know, because even the replacement ones, I benched my starting quarterback for replacement. While the quarterback I benched unfortunately did better, the one I put in there still scored, I think, 25. So it wasn't like the old days where you're getting 13 or 14 apiece from these guys.
Yeah, I feel like 25 is like the minimum you need to get, which is ironic. I mean, it used to be that anything over 20 was great, but
when you can't tackle a receiver, you can't use your helmet, and you can't land on a quarterback, you certainly see things start to open up just a little bit more. Not to mention, I feel like it can take a while for, especially for new quarterbacks and new schemes have been put in the off season. I feel like the offense has a bit of an advantage, and then as the season goes by and there's more tape out there, the defense begins to lock down a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's keep it moving. Hats off to Yoshi on your win. He improves to 3-1, so he's looking great for a first-year manager. And Russell Wilson, generally a great fantasy QB, but luckily Yoshi got the Mahomes pick anchoring him. A lower week for Mahomes, but still posting 22 points.
I think Yoshi might be a candidate this week for his lineup. He benched his Minnesota defense on the road, which while Pittsburgh still only got him 4 points, Minnesota got him -3. You're looking at the benching of Russell Wilson for Patrick Mahomes, which was stellar, and then pretty much every single person on his bench underperformed based off of the starters. Although both of his kickers posting 13 and 14 points respectively. So unlike the Chargers, it looks like he really has his kicker situation figured out.
Yes, unlike the Chargers, who I was sharing with Thornton before the call, finally just cut the guy who was holding the ball for the kicker because their last 5 have failed, and they're like, something's got to be wrong. But That's
They should have realized when the laces were always pointing in that there was a problem there. But
yeah. All right, so let's move on to our next matchup, which is Callie rolling Blunder versus James. Those were Droids. James continues his undefeated season with 126, demolishing Callie at 76. So almost 50-point differential. And to me, well, besides James just doing great, I mean, to me, the headliner for this is Drew Brees posting only 8 points. A few other duds on Callie's lineup, but she had some higher scores on her bench. We had Kirk Cousin for 31 points at quarterback for Minnesota, and then Cohen, Chicago running back, 23 points. But Cohen had been real bad, under 7 points each of his first 3 weeks. So I mean,
there have been a lot of people thinking he was really going to light it up this year. You know, new head coach, new coordinator, much more running back pass catching friendly system. But all of that pass catching duties had been going, or most of it had been going, to Jordan Howard. But in this game, they really got Cohen going. I don't know how much of that is the scheme or how much of that is the fact that Tampa Bay might have the worst defense in all of football. And you should start anyone that you have that plays against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I think they're averaging giving up around 35 points a game right now, so that's pretty rough. But yeah, I do feel badly for Callie. Her Odell Beckham not really showing up, Drew Brees not showing up. Dalvin Cook, who I guess they said he was on some kind of snap count, so he only played about 10 snaps in the whole game, just to make sure he stayed fresh. No recurring injury, just keeping him really with minimal touches to make sure that he wouldn't get hurt. And I guess struggling for running back, she started Wilkins for Indianapolis. I'm not honestly sure why she felt like that was the best call. Maybe she can write in, or her husband can join us at some point and let us know. But that's a strange choice. But really falling apart across the board, underperforming for her whole team.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Colts running back situation, but I do know Marlon Mack has been out for several weeks. So.
He has, and the running back that you've been wanting to have recently has been Nyheim Hines. Granted, we're not a PPR league, so that takes out some of his value, but he's been catching 7, 8, 9 passes a game, and has gotten, I think, scores in each of the last 2 weeks, especially as the Colts defense has been so poor and they keep falling behind. Andrew Luck just dumps it off to Nyheim Hines. But
yep. Well, hopefully there's an anomaly week for Callie. I mean, Amari Cooper, Oakland wide receiver, did show up with 18 points. Deshaun Jackson, Tampa Bay wide receiver, despite their anemic scoring at Tampa Bay, still managed to post 11. So, and Will Lutz, her
I must say
kicker,
the fun fact of the week: Will Lutz from New Orleans, double the amount of points as the quarterback for New Orleans, Drew Brees, 16 to 8.5. So,
yeah. That's how much they dominated the Giants. But props to James. I mean, he leads our league, and he posted an extremely strong 126 points.
Yeah. Every week he's consistent in the 120s.
Yeah, it's very impressive. He's got Flacco at quarterback with 22. James White, New England running back, had a breakout for him because he'd been underperforming. And then Golden Tate for Detroit, wide receiver, 25 points. Big game for him were his headliners. But as we've covered in previous weeks, James has some great wide receivers, just a very well-rounded team. He wasn't the highest this week. That will be coming up shortly, but still did good.
That is called a tease in the business, just in case you were wondering.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. We're gonna do Gamroth hanging with Hernandez versus Ike flying Bison. Gamroth, another blowout here, 126 beating Ike 87 points. The Schlossbergs, unfortunately, not looking good this week. what sticks
Or
out
any
to you?
week, really.
Or any week. What sticks out to you with this matchup, Thor?
Yeah, he had some really good matchups here. Matt Ryan at home, Julio Jones, that's a great connection. You look at John Brown, who's been really a revelation. I know about 4 years ago, he was something special out in Arizona and just has not been healthy for the last several years. But a new team, finally feeling healthy, and I believe he scored a touchdown now and had around 100 yards in 3 straight games. So really coming on strong in the flex. And then Kareem Hunt. It's funny, everyone was talking about Patrick Mahomes in the game last night against Denver, but Kareem Hunt is really the one who made that happen with a big touchdown and a lot of yards after the catch and some of his receptions. So, strong pretty much all the way around for James in this one. Conversely, you look at Ike, and he did have, again, Gurley performed pretty well, and another team where the kicker is the second highest scorer, and that tells you about the rest of the game for him.
Yeah, Ike. Todd Gurley, LA Rams running back with 21 points was his highest scorer, and there wasn't too much else going on. Rodgers has been underperforming. Aaron Rodgers, as quarterback, has been underperforming from a fantasy perspective, but they just blew out Buffalo 22-0. And Carson, Seattle running back, unfortunately for Ike, looks like he was an early Sunday morning scratch.
Which was really surprising. He had played and practiced during the week, and people thought he would be fine, and then out of nowhere he was scratched. So.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, not a lot to say, but congrats to Gamroth. He's 3-1, so one of the top guys here. He did get Vinatieri, Indianapolis kicker, who I had tried to stream briefly in week 2, and he posted 3 points there, and so I quickly dropped him. Props to Gamroth picking points 2 weeks in a row, so that's looking good. Julio Jones looks good for him, Atlanta wide receiver, so yeah.
Strong week all the way around.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Giesland versus Jake, right?
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
So Giesland finally gets his first one of the season, and he's not on here to talk about it, but he beats Jake 116 points to 71. Jake, I love your brother, but you have been under 80 points for the last at least 2 weeks. I don't know more, but sadly, Jake has Leonard Fournette, his first rounder, I think, maybe second rounder. I don't know. It looks like he did get a couple plays in. But Gee's performance, arguably, finally performing up to potential. He really had strong performances all around, with the exception of Watkins, Kansas City wide receiver, who posted a bagel, and Howard for Chicago running back, as we talked about. Cohen got most of the touches there. But Gio Bernard, Cincinnati running back, got 21 points. Cooks, LA Rams wide receiver. I mean, the Rams look unstoppable, so they're looking pretty good. But what do you think Jake needs to do here?
First of all, give me as much of the Rams as you can. Every receiver, or all 3 of the receivers, going over 100 yards and recording a touchdown in that game last week. I mean, really, I don't think you can go wrong, at least as a flex, with any of them. But for Jake, Chris Hogan, this is actually the only league that I don't have Chris Hogan, and he has been underwhelming. You would think with no Edelman and with a depleted running game that they would really target Hogan on the outside, but it just hasn't happened.
How about the Denver defense letting Jake down?
And not a huge surprise, playing Kansas City, the number 1 overall offense going into the game. They weren't They actually played very well in the first half, and they just died after that. It was very sad to see. Yeah, a poor Denver defense. Peyton Barber, the rookie that they drafted in Tampa Bay, is back, so Peyton Barber is going to have that workload really cut into by the rookie. You look at, I'm not sure what happened to Keenan Allen. I didn't see that game, but Kenny Stills as well. Miami couldn't get anything going. Really, just a underperformance pretty much across the board for Jake. And when you look at that with Geese, it's amazing how well he did considering Sammy Watkins got hurt early in that game and Jordan Howard barely touched the ball. Credit to Geese for making the best of small things here. Giovanni Bernard was a pickup partway through the season. Sony Michel's been riding his bench the whole season. It's really coming on now. Sterling Shepard, I don't know if he was drafted or if Geese picked him up later, but all three of those guys who have not been starters, or at least starter eligible, the first several weeks, coming up and getting at least 15 points for each of them. So really just a solid play on there. And then here's the irony. David's keeper, Corey Davis, who has done nothing all season, he finally put on the bench. And, of course, he goes off for 22 points. So the fantasy
wide receiver, yeah.
The fantasy football gods are not always kind, but
he got the win anyway. But, yeah, Jake, better luck in future weeks. The only real value Jake gave up significant was starting Tom Brady over Derek Carr.
Which, I mean, really, can you fault anyone for starting Tom Brady at home over Derek Carr?
No, I cannot. Brady posting 18, almost 19 points, and Carr posting 31. And the Browns' defense had looked decent, so that was not quite expected. But
it's amazing that we are now in a league where you can have 3 passing touchdowns, 274 yards, and you're still under 20 points, and that's just not considered a good week.
Yeah, well, 2 picks as well.
The picks do hurt, but
yeah. Okay, well, congrats to Giesland. He finally gets a win, and he's not at the bottom of the league. But let's go to the marquee matchup of the week. Myself versus Thornton. Thornton comes out with 140 points to my 127. Thornton, I'll give you the first word on this one. A lot to say, but I'll give you the first word.
There certainly is a lot to say, and not just because this is our matchup. I have to admit, Thursday night I was kicking myself when I saw that I had benched Jared Goff, which I thought at the time, playing against the Minnesota defense, I'm streaming Andy Dalton, who's got a great matchup in Atlanta, and I thought I'm making the right call, and Jared Goff just starts throwing touchdowns left and right, racking up the yards. He did it on the outside. He did it on the seam. He just always had wide open receivers. And of course, so many of those points with Cooper Kupp with 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought right out the gate that I was going to have the Ike Schlossberg Award for screwing up my lineup and leaving all the value on the bench. But thankfully, my steal of the draft so far, even though I picked him in the first round, the overall leader in fantasy points, Alvin Kamara, just coming on strong. Every game he finds another way to do it. So I believe he's posted around 30 or over 30 points in every game so far. Just 3 touchdowns, 134 rushing yards, another 50 receiving yards. Just doing it all. Melvin Gordon for the Chargers. It's amazing that I don't feel like he's very efficient necessarily, but they give him the ball so many times that he just always puts up numbers. Regardless of how well the Chargers do in any given game, I feel like Melvin Gordon's always putting up numbers. So that was good to see. Going into this matchup, or going into Monday night, I should say, Ben was ahead of me by 10, 15 points, I want to say.
It was between 8 and 10.
Between 8 and 10, and thankfully I had the Denver kicker, the Denver receiver, and a Denver running back all still to go, and they put up almost 30 points, which kind of eased me into a nice victory there. So, yeah, it started out poorly, but it really rallied from there.
Yep, so Thursday night I was feeling great with Cooper Cup's touchdowns. Was favored. The early Sunday games was looking great, and then as you said, Sunday afternoon with Kamara and Gordon, your two crazy good running backs. To set the record straight, Kamara actually has only did 34 week one and 36 this week, but he was actually under 20 the other 2 weeks. But
That's right, because we're not PPR. That's right.
right,
I have him in another league too, where he's gone over 40 for me multiple times.
right. But I think I ran your optimal lineup, and it was like over 170 points if you had done all the best players, because you didn't have slouches on your bench. I mean, a couple, but yeah, so it was kind of fun Monday night. You had 3 Denver players, which Homer, and
fully accepting the homer, but
yeah.
That value picks on them.
Yeah, versus my one player, Tyreek Hill. Now Hill has he's boomer bust. Week 1 he got 29 points. He's been mediocre since then. And so I was like, he gets a couple crazy touchdown runs. Unfortunately, Denver contained him, but I guess the problem with Kansas City's offense in real life is they have so many weapons. Then Hunt and Kelsey did damage instead. But
although they were really stymied for the entire first half, most of the fantasy scoring for that offense came really in the second half. And even I don't think there was a receiving touchdown for Kansas City because Hunt ran one in, and then Mahomes ran one in himself, and that was all of their touchdowns, I believe, right? Oh, I know. I guess there was a touchdown to Kelsey. That was like a shovel pass. So,
yeah, I don't know all the scores, but anyways, congrats to you. I think you are much better than your 2-2 record would say.
I am again the highest scoring person in the league, so I appreciate that. I do want to say though, Ben, Calvin Ridley, I didn't think he was really going to be worth the pick. I thought that he was going to firmly sit behind Sanu and Julio, but he has been money now for 3 weeks in a row, maybe. So.
Well, I picked him up after this is Calvin Ridley, rookie wide receiver for the Falcons. I picked him up after his Week 3 performance, where he got 3 touchdowns for 33 points.
I did not realize that he was even still available.
He was on the waiver wire, and I picked him up, and he kept it going with 17. So
great waiver wire claim there.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm optimistic about my team. I'm only 1-3, but this is the first time I think I broke 100 points.
Right.
And so I think I rose to the occasion against you. Deshaun Watson, 31 points.
Yeah, really breaking out of a funk there, Deshaun Watson.
But and Chicago defense doing great with 16, but I got burned by a few. Hill, I mentioned Kansas City wide receiver, but Mike Williams, LA Chargers wide receiver, he only scored 1.5 points. Last week he had 2 touchdowns for 20 points. He's a sophomore wide receiver that was their first round draft pick.
And he was hurt all of last year, correct?
Yeah, he was injured most of the year last year. He played a little bit, but so anyways, David Johnson, Arizona running back, finally doing something. But
I have to ask, are you concerned at all about Alex Collins? He was really looking good early in the game, and then he lost that goal line fumble, and it seemed like they kind of made him ride the bench after that a bit. And
I am extremely concerned about Collins, Baltimore running back. He's being out. Basically, he's getting his touches shared with their other running back, Allen.
Buck Allen.
Yeah, and basically Collins rarely gets the red zone carries, and it's Collins is really inefficient too, so I'm really disappointed with that pick. He's definitely going to be on my bench in week 5.
I've been surprised to see. I think we all thought Buck Allen might be their goal line back, but he's also been catching a lot of the passes. So if they're falling behind, or if they're looking for a check down, he's been coming in on a lot of the third downs too. I also want to say that Javorius Allen and having a nickname Buck. I mean, he just sounds like a man. I kind of wish I could meet him.
Buck Allen, yeah.
Buck Allen with his first name actually being Javorius. I mean, that is truly something to behold.
It's great. All right, well, that's our week 4 matchup, guys. We now have, sitting at the top, we have James at 4-0. Next, we have Gamroth at 3-1, followed by Yoshi at 3-1. So those are your top 3 teams. Looking at week 5, we're getting me versus Jake. Hopefully, an easy win for me. Giesland versus Callie, a little
all right.
domestic shakeup there. Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
Indeed.
Type of situation.
Although that movie is apparently what broke up Brad and Angelina, or Brad and the girl from Friends.
Yes. Luckily, yeah.
That's what destroyed their relationship, was the making of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So hopefully David and Callie do not have that kind of issue.
Our podcast just went down several levels, bringing up that celebrity gossip. But then we have Gamroth versus you, Thornton, Dornbush versus James, and Yoshi versus Ike. That's it for us here at the Collusion the Gathering Fantasy Football Podcast. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. And again, feel free to let us know if you want to join it next week. Everyone, set your rosters and good luck. And good night to y'all.
Peace out.